Next item is 080618, which is public hearing set for tonight for consideration of the preliminary development plan submitted by applicant Charles Kessler, Cadco LLC, for owner Charles Kessler, Ben and Ashley McCullers, and Albert Evans for 800 through 808 Salter Road and 809 Carr Avenue to develop a 12-lot subdivision. And we will point out that this request was considered by the Homewood Planning Commission at its meeting of June 5th, resulting in a favorable recommendation by a vote of 7-0. If I can, let me say a couple of things here before we get the report from Planning and Development, Mr. Thames. There are quite a few people here, I understand, that want to speak to this item, and we want to hear what you have to say. That's what a public hearing is all about. I would ask you to be not like the president of your city council, myself, and be focused on this, and therefore, if we could ask you to limit it to 2 minutes, and nobody's going to hit you with a gavel if you go a little over, but seriously, we want to hear what everyone has to say. So if you can be as succinct as possible, that would be a good thing. Secondly, Robert is going to offer a sign-up sheet for you, and before you speak, we would like your name and your Homewood address, if we could have that. So we've got a record of your time with us. So if you will, please plan on going ahead, and anybody that wants to speak, go ahead like now and line up and sign in. With that report from Planning and Development, Mr. Thames.
President, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is 90618, does that go, shouldn't that go first? Maybe I'm thinking.
No.
Mr. Kendrick?
Under the zoning ordinance, you have to approve the development plan prior to rezoning.
Prior to rezoning.
So essentially, the development plan, if approved, would be an exhibit to the rezoning ordinance, Exhibit B. Exhibit A is the legal description of the property. So the appropriate action is that prior to rezoning or considering rezoning, you have to approve the development plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thames?
Yes, sir. The committee met, and after hearing a report from the Planning Commission involving the approval of the preliminary development plan that involved a long list of proffers by the applicant, voted to send this out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's open the public hearing and look forward to hearing what folks have to say. Okay. Yes, the applicant does need to come up first. Thank you for that reminder. Your name and where you live.
My name is Jason Kessler. Our office address is 3505 Benton River Road, Birmingham, Alabama 35216. I think at this point, the City Council, Planning Commission, everybody's heard a lot about this proposed development. I won't take up too much time going through the entire presentation again. But the gist of it is this is currently, I guess, 5 lots, and we're trying to turn it to rezone it and resurvey it into 12 lots, with one of the homes that's currently on the property staying in as part of the development. You know, we made a lot of, as Mr. Thames said, a lot of proffers during the process of working through this, through the Planning Commission. We changed our plan multiple times. We offered to, change our covenants so that accessory structures and a gated community can never be allowed in this development. We changed our lot sizes. We cut our lot density from 15 to 12. Side setbacks, we changed to meet NPD requirements. Our height restriction in our homes, we changed to meet NPD requirements. We feel like we've done the due diligence required of us, or anybody that wants to try to rezone or resurvey anything, meeting with city council members, the school superintendent, the neighbors on multiple occasions, trying to make sure that we're doing this by the book, trying to do it right, and work with everybody in good faith. That said, we do understand that from the feedback we've received that this is unlikely to be approved tonight. So really, again, I don't want to take up too much time. I know this is going to get open for public hearing. I'm of the opinion, too, that understanding that this is not going to get approved, that, the public hearing may be hopefully limited with people understanding that's not going to happen. One question I would like to ask, just because, again, we've done everything that we feel like we can, and we've even heard from at least one or two city officials that as far as just the plan itself, our PRD1 plan is a better plan overall than what we can do under the current NPD zoning guidelines. So our question is, again, not knowing, but from the feedback we've received, what is the biggest concern? And if I need to come back up and ask that later, I can do so after the public hearing. But we're just trying to look for some feedback, thinking that we've got a really, really great plan here, the concerns with the city council, what they may be.
Well, I'm speaking for myself. I want to hear the concerns from the citizens before we answer that question. That's the purpose of a public hearing.
Sure.
But I will say to you that my fellow council members and myself have received a substantial outpouring from the community in the area. And I expect the response that we're going to hear in the next little while is going to be similar to the texts and emails that we have received. Having said that, you're the developer. You have if you've got any formal requests you want to put forth, great. If not, we'll go forward.
Right, and again, happy to address any of the concerns from the public hearing. But again, that's the gist of it, and so we'll just leave it to any questions you may have, and if not, the public hearing.
Well, let's wait 1 second. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask Mr. Kessler on the council?
I would like to ask why the need, if you're going to meet all of the NPD regulations, why are you pushing forward for a rezone?
Well, the NPD, we couldn't meet all of them, and that's how we kind of came up. Well, we met with the city staff, and they were the ones who looked at the piece of property overall and said that the PRD1 would be a good option. The biggest issue that we have would be the square footage of the lots, just due to, there's two different NPD calculations that we're working with, one for Carr and one for Salter, and they're separate. But we've got to make it all fit together like a puzzle. And the square footages of the lots was the biggest issue that we ran into. So we could offer as much as we could, and we tried to, again, with our height restrictions, our side setbacks. Front and rear became very hard to do. We couldn't meet 25 and 20. We did 20 and 15. But again, that was the biggest issue we ran into. We couldn't quite make it fit under NPD. We just tried to make it fit as NPD as we could.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Jones, please.
Was there any type of traffic study done as part of the plan?
Good question.
With the application that we turned in, and this was at least a few months ago at this point, there was a simple traffic study done the way that somebody in our office did it based off of I can't remember what it's called, but there's a guidebook of which to do it. But it should have been in the application, but that is the only traffic study that was done.
Okay, I hadn't seen that, so maybe somebody has a copy.
And it may not have, I don't know if that passes through from Planning Commission to City Council or if it doesn't, but it was turned in with our original packet.
Oh, while you're here, was there a traffic study that you saw, Mr. Toombs?
I do not recall, not one performed by the city.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. All right, sir, you were first, and please come forward. Whoever was first, there you go. And again, if you'll state your name and your address and go.
Charles Mender Hout,
Good.
101 Oglesby Avenue. I was here before, and I had just a couple concerns, and that was the noise about my wife, and that I wanted the water taken care of. But my wife and I have been talking about it, and we studied it, and we moved to Homewood back in 1979. And we moved here for 3 reasons. All the trees, beautiful neighborhoods, quiet, and the schools. We're living in Inslee. I just got out of the service, and my mother had some property there, and our neighbors in Inslee were shooting at each other. So we wanted to get a place, and when I
Yes.
finally was making enough money, I was still going to UAB. I graduated, went to work for an insurance company, and we had enough money, we moved to Homewood. My son, we've got one child, when he got old enough, and I was working for Bell South at the time, I was making enough money to move. He didn't want to move. He had a girlfriend, all of his friends he could walk to. And what they want to do, change the zoning, is going to mess up the neighborhood. I almost said a bad word. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Please don't change the zoning. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. All right,
I
next.
forgot one thing. I sent to y'all an email, sent a check from Alabama Power for $18,000, and that was because a power line dropped down on Al's easement. And the easement is where they wanted to put the park. Please don't put a park there. Kid might die.
I understand.
$18,000 fix the roof on my house, but I don't think you can $18,000 fix a child.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I've got my stopwatch on.
Thank you. So do I.
This is a written protest by Charles Amos Thompson. I'm a 72-year-old attorney. My father built a house at 706 Carr Avenue. He did it on Saturdays. It took him 3 years. He completed it in 1948. As a 3-year-old, I moved in 1948. Currently, I am the co-owner of 706 and 708 Carr Avenue. I'm the landlord. I live at 3174 Pipeline Road, Vestavia Hills. That area where this is proposed has restaurants nearby. I think Gianmarco, and I don't know if JoJo's is open or not. But they have a major parking problem there. The area has heavy traffic when the restaurants are open. This will increase when you start developing this. Short Salter Road used to be two-way. Now, because of lack of parking, it's now a one-way, and you can go up there after working hours, and it's maxed out on parking there, and it's a one-way. The water drainage will increase with new construction of houses and driveways. Vehicle traffic in front of my property will increase. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
141.
You did well. Next.
John Chashy, 836 Acton Avenue. I have a couple questions first. Is anybody seen an official survey by a surveyor that this is in fact 2 acres? I didn't see one, so I was just wondering if that's been completed.
Mr. James?
Mr. Cobb can probably answer that, but I believe a survey would have had to have been submitted in the rezone packet.
It was submitted.
Okay. All right. I'm against the rezone due to the fact that it adds unwanted congestion to our neighborhood. I also think that it's important as city council members to ask people that come up here and speak if they have any financial interest or will make any financial gain by this development. I think you'll find that the vast majority of people that are against it don't have a financial gain. I think that it's telling that Mr. Kessler is moving back to Homewood, but he didn't buy a house and doesn't want to build in his own development. I wonder why. Is it because it'll be so congested? I'm not sure, but I think that that's telling. We submitted a 40-person petition against the rezone in the other committee. I forgot the name of it, but in the prior committee. And I did want to say that we're not 100% against redevelopment, but we're united against this rezone, and we don't want it, and we don't like it as neighbors. And I also had another question about, we were told that the zoning was not going to be voted on today. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay, because we received a text message, my wife and I'll be happy to share it with y'all. But we received a text message from, I believe, Walter, that said CADCO has withdrawn their request to rezone. Thanks, Walter.
I can address that. That's what I got from Mr. Cobb. Mr. Cobb, you want to,
Okay.
there was a discussion of him withdrawing that's what I understood from Mr. Cobb. So I passed that along when I heard that.
Sir, to be fair, we've gotten conflicting reports as
Okay.
individual council members.
Well, I would request that we not be able to vote on it tonight, because if y'all are going, if there's city councilors telling people it's not going to be voted on, there's people that didn't show up tonight because we were told by a city councilor that it's not going to be voted on. And I understand y'all have an obligation,
Right,
but.
I mean, I'm
but
trying to pass along information
I understand.
as I get it.
Y'all have to understand how we feel as neighbors if we're told by a city councilman that it's not going to be voted on, and then all of a sudden it is voted on. That, I feel like I'm getting the wool pulled over my eyes. But
No,
yeah.
it's a fair a statement, but, well, all I can tell you is that that's absolutely not what happened.
Right. And
But
I'll be
there was
happy
conflicting
to-
information.
I'll be happy to show the news the text messages if they want to see it, because
No
I don't
problem.
think it's really fair, and I just
I
wanted
understand.
that to be on the record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir. Last Wednesday, Mr. Kessler came into my office and he had another plan that worked with NPD calculations. And he and I sat and discussed that plan. It would look like a very nice plan. And he told me then he was going to drop his rezone and go with the new plan. Today, Mr. Kessler called me back and said it was the other, Plan B was not working out, and he wanted to move forward with where we were with tonight's planned meeting.
It's a bait and switch.
Well, again, sir, we're going to listen to every single individual tonight who wants to speak, okay? Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Next. Yes,
My
ma'am.
name is Nika Javaris. I live in 108 Acton Avenue. I've been there since 1965. I have seen everything, and I just want to tell you, when I first moved there, I went and visited all my neighbors, and I asked them a question. I said, would you mind telling me what is the biggest investment that you have made? And they said, a home. I said, why don't we all start taking care of the houses, clean them up, built the neighborhood, and we did, and it's triggered over to Oglesby Street. Now, I want to tell you something. They bought the property, they bought 5 homes there, they can build 5 homes there, no problem there. But if you vote for them to rezone, what's going to happen, you just have a can of worms, you open it up, and it triggered all over the city of Homewood. There'll be more problems than anything else, so please reconsider. No rezoning. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That was succinct. We appreciate that. Next.
Thank you for hearing us tonight. My name is Lisa Group, and I'm at 807 Acton Avenue. I am one of the abutting properties. And you guys have heard from me on email, so I'll just
Yes,
hit the
ma'am.
high points and be brief. I support the current Edgewood Master Plan and its NPD zoning. We don't have any water problems now. We don't have leaks. We don't have floods. When we bought, we were informed that we were on a high water table, and we took some care in the building so that we would not have problems, and we don't. When this situation came up and CADCO hosted a neighborhood party in the mud and the pouring rain, I did go out and speak directly to Mr. Kessler Sr. and express my lack of support for such a big subdivision on these 5 lots, because I felt like it would negatively affect my property. And they always say that no one ever said anything negative, but I was there and I said something negative. I'm also concerned about the traffic study. I know that there's something, Mr. Thames, about something that CADCO did themselves, but I'd like for like a real one to be done by somebody that has an impartial relationship to the project, because I do have some concerns about Short Salter, just because it is kind of a screwed up situation over there with it being one way. I've also, gosh, it kind of makes my head hurt, and I do have a PhD, to think about the runaround that we've been getting. So let me think back to when there was an NPD plan on the table, there were a lot of driveways onto Carr, which, I think is, might happen and it might be okay, and I'd like to see a traffic study. There might need to be a four-way stop put at Acton and Carr, but somebody needs to be looking at that situation if that comes to pass. I'm also concerned about these covenants and these words like never that get used. If you're going to have an HOA and you're going to have covenants and restrictions, this thing started out as a gated community. Now we've got promises that that there'll be covenants against that. There's going to be an HOA that they are going to. Let's see. Kessler's going to keep it while it's under construction, and after construction, it will go back to the neighborhood. And then they, as an HOA, they'll have whatever power is written into their HOA, right? So I think it creates an imbalance of power with the HOA and the things that they might decide to do in the future. You can't say words like never when you're not going to control it the whole time, right? It's eventually going to be turned over. I don't
3.5, ma'am.
I don't have any compelling interest to support PRD1, and I feel like I have a lot of interest in maintaining NPD, the lot sizes, the restrictions, but also just the preservation, the reason that we call it NPD. I feel really strongly that I support that, and that I would like for others who develop in that area, there are 2 houses next to me that are being redeveloped, to follow those guidelines and to mind those rules. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next. Name and address.
Becky Laurent, 345 Lucerne Boulevard. I'm about 2 miles away from this proposed development, but I can assure you that my car has worn a groove and car run into Publix. 2 points. When the development on the Broadway Triangle went before the Board of Zoning Adjustments to get some relief and be able to put more houses there, the developer seemed like a great guy. A lot of the neighbors were in favor. The plan looked pretty good on paper. But now that we see those houses in the flesh, they have really overwhelmed that area. And in retrospect, I think it was a mistake to have those variances granted. So, here we have another high-density proposal for the very same neighborhood. And the other concern that I have is where we live, a lot of the homeowners have 3 or 4 vehicles. So if you have 4 extra homes in this development, if they don't all fit in the driveways, where are those cars going to sit? And I have to say that the crowd in the room was just amazed when there was a unanimous recommendation in favor of rezoning. And I'm asking y'all to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Just to clarify, there was not a unanimous recommendation to recommend rezoning from the Planning Commission. It was a 3-3 no vote.
Was it the development plan?
Correct, the development plan, which is an attachment to the rezone request, as Mr. Kendrick explained.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ms. Ellaby.
Liz Ellaby, 612 Cobb Street. I was just going to make a suggestion before I heard about the switcheroo with the plan tonight. And that suggestion was, would the council or the Planning Commission consider coming up with a statement or a policy that of the kinds of zoning projects that they prefer and would welcome, as opposed to the kinds of projects that like this that would create a lot of furor and upheaval, where you're taking an island out of a preservation district and zoning it down. It seems to me that there would be some rules of thumb that you all could call on and just publish, maybe along with the literature, the packet that goes to developers, so that they know going in, this is what Homewood is all about. These are the kinds of rezonings that are welcome, and these are the kinds of things that we're going to take a hard look at. That's my comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hi, my name's Megan Kane. I live at 210 Acton Avenue. We built a couple of years ago, and one of the best compliments that we received, we were a new build, by the way, is we love the reno. The house looks great. We worked really hard to try and look like the rest of the neighborhood. If you've been on Acton, the houses are small and charming, and it looks like Homewood. And so I am all for development. I'm not for 12 houses. That's a lot of houses, and houses that we're not sure what they're going to look like. But if we're not going to go by NPD, then it's probably not going to be the charm that we're looking for. That's my concern. There is currently a home that is beautifully done that would be a part of that development. I would love to see 4 or 5 more homes that look like that, but I would not like to see 12 homes and 2 acres. And I'm not in favor of the rezoning either. So thanks for considering this, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I'm Martha Ann Cooper. I live at 306 Grand Avenue, and I just have a request for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not here to talk you into anything or talk you out of anything, but I think every one of you here is voted. You got into your position by being voted in there, if I'm correct. And there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. One person you talk to understands it one way, another person understands it another way, and somehow I feel like the facts are getting lost. I think it's up to you all to decide what's really best for Homewood. And we can all stand up here and say, well, I think this is best, and I think this is best. But ultimately, it's going to be your decision. And I would just ask you to do what you really think is best for Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I'm Gary Johnson. I live at 220 Oglesby. I've lived there for 17 years. I'm coming tonight to voice my disapproval and non-support for the change in ordinance. I do support the NPD. I'm learning as I arrive here tonight there's been some kind of switch of a roux, and I'm really disappointed to hear that. And I look at my folks, Patrick, and to, Walter. Certainly, you all have echoed your support for our community, and I certainly hope that we will continue to honor the NPD plans that we have. And I also hope that we will follow the master plan. You had a very articulate woman on television this week talking about the Homewood master plan and the importance of it and the desire to continue to make our neighborhood a better place. And this change does not do that, because there's no reason I, as a taxpayer who love this community, my community, and support this community, I am not allowed these same changes in zoning ordinances. So why should a builder be able to do that? And to correct the woman who just spoke, there's really not a lot of misinformation or confusion. There's a change, either an NPD plan or not. So the confusion is not there. We're not confused. We want to have the NPD plan, not to have the zoning change, and to have 12 homes put into that small space. And if you take into account this change, the pink house, and what we understand you can do, you're adding almost, 16 to 17 homes in those 2 small spaces. Please, as the woman just said, make the right decision for Homewood, the community that we love and are vested in seeing the best for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, if you haven't signed in, please do so. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Giles. I currently live at 100 Venetian Way, so I live in West Homewood. Up until a year ago, though, I was living at the end of Mountain Ridge, and so many of my neighbors that are here speaking tonight for my first 6 years here in Homewood were my direct neighbors, now just fellow Homewoodians. I, like a lot of folks who are speaking out against this, am not against redevelopment. I love Homewood. I came from a big city. I love the charm. But I also recognize we have older homes in our neighborhoods, and our homes need to be renovated. They need to be upgraded to meet needs. And I think that the Neighborhood Preservation District is wonderful in that plan, giving us a guideline that we can all, as individuals, do that fairly. As the gentleman who just spoke said, when you start taking our property and allowing our developers to gobble up pieces of it, to chunk together 2 acres, and then rezone it to PRD, and then plop 12 houses on it, you've taken the power and the ability of individual residents to maintain their environment and their community the way they want, and you've given it to developers. Because now our value isn't in our individual home, it's can a developer come in and gobble up and sit on some land and then get enough to PRD and then plop 12 houses. Specifically for me, I live at the corner of Oak Grove and Venetian Way. There are 3 homes right across the street from me that are older homes that sit on massive lots. I acknowledge that at some point, the older residents who live in those homes will probably sell those houses, and we will probably see those lots resurveyed, and we'll see more houses directly across from our street. What I hope and I pray is that we do not set a precedent tonight that what I'm going to see across my street is 4 or 5 nicely done houses that fit our current NPD plan, but 30 or 40 houses because of the size of that property, because we've set a precedent here that says developers come in and take over and add unwanted density to our community. I would also like to point out, Ms. Andress, thank you for your communication back to me. When I reached out to my city council members, I will say, and I am sorry for calling you out, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Wolverton isn't here, but Mr. Higginbotham, I have emailed you 2 to 3 times on this item, including as recently as last week. And it is very disappointing for me as somebody of Ward 2, trying to get information from you and your perspective on this, that I did not warrant a return email. So I hope that you can all continue to be responsive to your residents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Since I was personally addressed, let me make clear, the reason I did not respond to the email is I do not comment on zoning cases prior to them coming before council. That has been my policy on every zoning case that has come before this council. It will continue to be my policy, but I do apologize. I did not send you an email that said I do not comment on zoning cases before they come council.
The important is that you're establishing and opening up the dialogue with the resident to acknowledge you've at least heard my concerns, are in the process, and understand what's before you.
As I said, I apologize. I did not send an email to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Heather Brewer, 1513 Valley Place. I have no vested interest specifically in this development, but I do have an interest in preserving the charm of Homewood. Quite some time back when we kind of went through what the height requirements and things were going to be, I was very interested in that conversation. And maybe at the end, I didn't exactly kind of get what I thought would have been reasonable, but we did end up with something. So I think we should really stick to kind of the guidelines that everyone has fought so hard to kind of get in place. Probably not everyone's happy with them, but everyone's comfortable with them. And I think that everyone should be stuck with the same guidelines that I personally would be stuck with in my own development. And so I would, request not rezoning the property.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
My name is Craig Boyette, 100 Acton Avenue. I'm totally against the rezoning. We've gotten a lot of information and misinformation on how many houses and the whole 9 yards. I think we definitely need traffic study. We need a parking study, but it needs to be done at night when Jean Marcos is cranking out the people and JoJo's cranking out the people. We've had issues with rescue vehicles not being able to come down car because of the parking. It's at night. If you do a study in the day, you won't see that. But you throw 12 more houses in the mix, driveways on car, we'll have people park for 4 blocks around, blocking streets and doing whatever they do. We're not in favor of it at all. You know, any kind of development is reasonable, but 12 houses is not reasonable. We acknowledge there's vacant lots, there's older homes they've probably already purchased, I'm sure, and, you know, new house looks better than an old house for sure, but I'd just ask everybody to think about it. Let's vote this down and send them back to the drawing board and come up with something that reflects Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hey, I'm Chris Whaley. I'm at 804 Acton Avenue. I'm about to pitching wedge. Nope, 9-iron away from the proposed development. You know, I think it's hard going last because a lot of people make the good points that you want to make earlier on. You know, I think I'm against the development largely because it's not fitting with the feel and the theme of Homewood. I think the neighborhood preservation district is the way to go. I think it sets a nice standard for what homes should feel like and the neighborhood feels like in this area. And so, you know, I do want to make the point that other people have made as well, is that Homewood is a developing city. I mean, there's plenty of development going on within the city itself, and none of us are really against that development. I think development for development's sake is where we begin to get a little worried about it. And so there's no doubt in my mind that these properties will get built on and that nice homes fitting within the theme that we like to enjoy will be built there. And so that's not really a concern, I think, of anyone here. It's just the overdevelopment is what we think we're concerned about. You know, and I'm glad a lot of our neighbors are here. It's nice to know that I know there's been a little bit of difficulty with communication about what was going on at this meeting. Was there going to be a vote? Was there not going to be a vote? You know, if you're relaying that information that there may not be a vote and you learn otherwise, it probably is wise to communicate with the people that you told that there wasn't going to be a vote so that they can make adjustments, even if you can't reach everybody. I know y'all talk to a lot of people during the course of the week, and so, but at least reach out to some so that we can spread that information amongst ourselves as well. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, and did you sign in?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes.
I'm Jolene Lewis, and I live at 821 Acton Avenue, and I am opposed to the rezoning. And I also would like to ask for a traffic study to be done, and I would like to get some information about how this may possibly affect the floodplain. As
I'm
a
sorry,
resident, the floodplain. As a
Okay.
resident of 821 Acton Avenue, I have met with Mr. Cobb on many occasions. He probably knows me well. I've had to make many improvements to my home, and I have spent thousands of dollars since I bought my house because I live in a floodplain. And I'd like to know what effect this would have potentially on my property. I'm sure that there are other people, but I actually live in the lowest part of that street, so I'm most affected by the floodwaters when that happens, and it has happened several times in the time that I have lived there. And so I am asking for that information to be ascertained and to given to us so that we can make a determination as to how this would affect us. You know, when you have less water, less dirt, less ground available for the rain to fall, it has to go somewhere. So where is it going to go, and are we able to handle that?
Thank you. Next. And again, you've signed in, correct? Thank you.
Hey, I'm Paige Wilcutt, and I'm at 114 Oglesby. And I'm not going to repeat what everybody said, but I'm against the PRD one for all the reasons that they said. But please, regardless of if it's 12 houses, 6 houses, whatever, please do a traffic study. I have a 15-year-old, and we pull out, and it's like cars on both sides parked. Gianmarco's bringing in traffic. When the Publix, it's just a speedway through there when everybody's rushing to Publix in the afternoon. So regardless, there needs to be a traffic study because it's just dangerous pulling out at that intersection. And Oglesby becomes the valet parking. They'll zip down Oglesby and go the circle for Gianmarco. So there needs to at least be that consideration.
I understand. I have a question. Did the three-way stop not help the traffic? I see a couple of people nodding their heads yes, so.
It helped, but you know, that one way on Short Salter, and
Sure.
it kind of, it'll back up on Carr during like heavy traffic times, and it just, if we put 6 driveways on Carr, or however many that they were suggesting, if you don't change the zoning, with multiple cars, I don't see how that's really going to flow. It's just you're going to back up Oglesby, back up Acton. So there needs to be some studies or some.
No,
somebody
I
come and
agree.
look at that.
And I also agree that if we're going to do the study, it should be done in the twilight hours when
Absolutely.
the traffic's there.
Absolutely.
I
Anytime
couldn't
from
agree
about
more.
3 till dark, or after dark even. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Amanda Flavin. I live at 113 Oglesby. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I implore upon the the council tonight to deny this rezone. Cadco bought this property knowing that it was zoned NPD, and the city has gone through great lengths to set the rules associated with NPD. To then allow an outside developer to come in and buy a property and rezone that property to circumvent those rules is absurd. Furthermore, it sets a terrible precedent. What is to stop other developers from following suit? Cadco has argued this is a unique situation, except that it's not a unique situation. There's property for sale all over Homewood right now. Look at the corner of Forest and Cliff Place. It's a large piece of property for sale. There's a adjacent property for sale. If a developer were to buy up all that property, who knows how many homes they could put there. Also, I believe this development will only exacerbate the traffic situation on Carr and Broadway. I turn left out of Oglesby every single day to get to work, and if anybody's turning left from Short Salter and they whip out, you have to time yourself you have to be very careful. And I think this development will only make that will make it worse. I also think the schools are already overcrowded currently. This is only going to cause more overcrowding, and the precedent it sets will cause further issues down the road for the schools. As other residents have mentioned, the drainage issues, this is also going to exacerbate those. So please enforce the current zoning restriction on the properties in question and protect our beloved community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next. Please come forward, sign in.
Ben McCullers.
Have you already signed in? I'm sorry.
what?
Have you already signed in?
No, I will. I'm Ben McCullers. I live on the corner of Short Salter. Gentleman kind of said, people who are only for it are getting a financial gain from it. So I guess I'm coming in defense of myself here, which is funny because I haven't even talked numbers with anybody. So that for him to say I'm getting a financial gain is kind of comical. But I've heard about 10 people say the charm of Homewood. What does that mean? The charm of Homewood. See, before about 6 months ago, because that's when the developers came and knocked on my door. I didn't ask them to. They came to me and, tried to talk business with me. Would we be interested? Sure. But my deal is, what's the charm of Homewood? We're both, me and my wife are kind of second generation Homewood people, so we've been here since the early 70s. But it used to be the people, not the houses. Because quite frankly, people are talking about the island, the triangle. Well, I've met my new neighbors, they're wonderful people. And I really hate to hear when people talk bad about their houses, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And they're not here to defend themselves. They're for this. But quite frankly, they got better things to do. But the thing is, see, they're talking behind me. I'll just gavel. But my problem is, I've had people who basically are blaming me, a citizen.
Please let Mr.
I'd like to
McCullers
regain my
have his
time. Reclaim my time, please.
You're going to have your time, sir.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead. No comments, please, one at a time.
But what I'm saying is they're blaming me. I've had people come up in my yard when I'm throwing the ball with my 6-year-old son, pointing their finger in my face saying, this is all your fault. To which I have to tell my son to go inside and nicely escort this person off my property. But that's what we're dealing with. That's what this has turned into. It's really, the people used to be what is great about Homewood, the charm about Homewood, not the four walls, okay? And I don't know what y'all are gonna vote. Quite frankly, I would say I don't care, but I don't even care. But what I'm saying is, when you have people walking up the sidewalk that won't even look at you in the eye, that won't even say, good morning, good afternoon, hey, how are you? That's a problem. And that's what this has turned into. So I say, my argument is the charm of Homewood, but it's also the precedence that's set. And I just say, you know, I look at this as the squeaky wheel gets the oil, because the more people argue and argue and argue, it's the people who, quite frankly, are being about as polite and treating y'all with the utmost respect, who are the ones who are kind of being blamed or being, in my opinion, mistreated, because we don't deserve it. I haven't done anything. I'm not asking anybody for anything. So I just say, to the precedence that's going to be set, you're going to do what you want to do, but the precedence is also, you know, if I just don't want Homewood to go down a road that, you know, to give into the mob mentality, because the more we don't like this, you're going to get what you want. That's not a good precedence to set either. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Next, please. All right, if there is no one else who wishes to speak to this, by the way, we've now had, by my count, 19 individuals speak, so I would say to you that's a pretty significant representation of our community. If there are no other comments, and I assume there are not, then we will close this public hearing. And I would welcome comments from the council first. Anything that anyone wants to say, because a lot of information has been put forth here.
I'll say something.
Ms. Smith, go. And then
gonna
Mr. McCluskey.
It's going to be very short and sweet because it's not my word. It's Mr. McCluskey's and Mr. Jones's. I will say I do hate that this has kind of become us against them in a neighborhood that's full of great people. But I will say it's not so much for me giving into a mob mentality. It is very much about protecting the things that I think are very special about Homewood. I do use that intersection frequently. I am concerned about the traffic that will be added when you add 12 houses to an already very congested area. I am also concerned about the density of the development. I know, Mr. Kessler, you asked what some of our concerns were, and those, frankly, are my two major concerns. The effect that it'll have on traffic, and frankly, a traffic study by someone in your office is not really sufficient for what that, we need an expert who's not involved in the project, who would be an objective person who could give a more, you know, clinical and professional and expert answer as to how the traffic would be affected. I do think the density of the development is a concern for me, and I don't endorse anybody walking on anyone's property and blaming them for something that's certainly beyond their control and not their fault. But I do think that there are concerns that are valid, and as has been expressed here tonight, and I do share some of those concerns. So, for your question, that's what it is to me.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. McCluskey?
Yes, thank you. Of course, several things to say. A couple of different things just to make sure that we're clear on some items. I believe one gentleman said something about the traffic was, has become worse on Short Salter due to, or did it become one-way due to all the parking problems? Well, Short Salter was one-way before they put the parking on. I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then there was a question about the driveways on Carr, the additional driveways on Carr. And of course, that has nothing, that's the NPD plan that might or might not come back. That's not the PRD1 plan. So again, I'm just making it clear, not making a statement one way or the other on it. To sort of reiterate what Mrs. Smith said, Walter and I, and of course all the other council members, have had numerous conversations, emails, discussions with residents, with the developers. Walter and I had a meeting with them not 2 weeks ago and expressed our concerns in regards to the fact that the zoning was the big issue for us. You know, there was a meeting that was actually scheduled with some residents that I missed, and I apologized for, that, you know, we expressed our same concerns when it came to the rezoning part of it. I do think that the precedent is the biggest issue. I am personally not for the rezoning, but I will say this, that the charm in Homewood to me, and I agree with what Mr. McCullers did say, is that I believe the charm is the people. And, you know, we will take, you know, we volunteer and we ran for election knowing that there were going to be disagreements for 4 years between us and between residents. And we have to look at you guys on a, you know, as much as we possibly can. And, you know, I'll take blame for anything that, you know, is an issue with a resident, but we do the best we can with the information that's given. But, you know, that's what we signed up for. That's what we signed up for when we volunteered and we ran for election, is to deal with the good and the bad from you guys, and from the residents and the businesses. But what's happened recently with all of the development and the attitudes from neighbor to neighbor has been disappointing. And it's not just this situation, it's been kind of throughout the city. You know, I hope that, you know, we can all get past this. I know there are things we're all gonna disagree upon. I mean, that's just the way it is. But, you know, bring it to us. That's what Walter and I are here for, and that's what the rest of these city council members and the president and the mayor and his staff are here for. That's, you guys bring it to us. Do what you can not to necessarily bring it to neighbors. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The chair would welcome a motion and a second. The motion on the table to be either approved or denied would be a motion for approval, I think.
I'm sorry. Am I going to get the opportunity at some point to address the public hearing?
Mr. Kessler, I'll certainly give you that opportunity. Come forward.
I'll try to make it as quick as I can.
Please do.
A few things. The first off, I do want to take a moment to defend Mr. Greg Cobb. What he said, it was all true. I met with him last week. We come up with a possible alternative version of a plan that we could see through. And I did say that, you know, if we could make it work, that we would be pulling off of the agenda. And Walter probably heard something similar. Now, we never did pull it. And I was also talking to Donna Bridges as early as, or as late as last week when I came up to the city to drop off a building permit application. And I told her we're still struggling with what to do. We may, you know, still present, we may not. This has been a struggle to try to figure out exactly how we wanted to go forward with this. And so there was no bait and switch. You know, if we started off this process, like I said, trying to meet with as many people as we could, the city officials, neighbors. We've met with neighbors on multiple occasions. We had a neighbor block party. I put my name and number out to anybody who would listen. I talked to people on nights and weekends, hours on the phone, trying to answer any questions that I could about this development. If that were the case, and then I would try to do a bait and switch at the last second. I wouldn't have done all that to begin with. And I wouldn't have started this hearing tonight by saying we come in with the understanding that we are looking at a denial. So I just wanted to clear that up. And again, since I try to keep personal and professional separate, but since it was brought up.
Please do.
Since it was brought up, I'll address it. You know, a lot of things come into deciding where you and your family are going to live, and a lot of that decision is not mine alone. I have a wife, and she has more say than I do. And, you know, the timing had a lot to do with this. We knew that this had to go through this process, whereas where we're going to build our home, for multiple reasons, it works a lot better. My wife has a lot of family. Our kids are friends with their kids. They're walking distance. There's a lot of personal reasons. As to the concerns brought up by the public, and we've heard them before, and that's why we tried to address them as best we could when we made proffers to change our plans. Drainage was one that was brought up a few times. And as we've said, we'd be building, with this plan, if it had gone forward, we would have been building a storm sewer system that was only going to help improve the drainage system as opposed to making it worse. Traffic, as far as the traffic study is concerned, Ms. Smith, by no means did we turn that in as some sort of you know, be all end all. That's when we turn in any city and they ask for a traffic study, we do it the same way as just a baseline. This comes in with the application, nothing more, nothing less. So by no means did we think that that was going to be some expansive traffic study. But as far as the traffic is concerned, part of the problem with that area is, again, if you try to turn left off of Short Salter to go by Oglesby, you do have people trying to go both ways, and it doesn't intersect. With our new road, we thought it would help. With our road intersecting with Oglesby, if you could just go straight across from either direction. People coming into Edgewood Manor, if they live there, could come straight across, or you could go straight across Oglesby to go down Broadway. With our plan, we would not be adding any new driveways to Carr Avenue. People talked about the driveways that would be added to Carr with the other plan, and the other NPD plan would add more driveways. And again, in our opinion, that would only make the traffic issue worse. The park, you know, we've heard a lot about the park. As far as the concern about that, we were gonna scratch that anyway. That was gonna be taken out. Somebody mentioned that it started off as a gated community, and that's what we talked about when we say that there was a lot of misinformation about this piece of property. It was never going to be gated. Was never turned in that way, and all we did was say that we would covenant against it ever being gated. Now, the HOA, she asked about the HOA and could we change that. If we put it in our covenants, we couldn't simply just come back and change that later. You know, the charm and the density are two things that have been brought up a lot. On the charm, whether it's NPD or PRD1, we're going to be building this out, and you know, we're going to build a certain style, but keep in mind, and we've tried to make this point, that the buyers are going to dictate the style of these homes more than probably anybody else, including ourselves. We're going to build what people want. And it's not going to matter what zoning that's going to be in. Now, as far as the density is concerned, two things. One, the PRD1 zoning only allows for us to cover 25% maximum of our area coverage. NPD allows for 50%. So if this goes forward with NPD, more than likely, these are going to be bigger homes than what we would be building if we had PRD1. Under PRD1, we had a certain number that we had to stick to as far as the biggest homes that we could build. And once it was basically an allowance. And once we got to that allowance, we couldn't make them any bigger. With NPD, as big as these lots are going to be now, we could, and won't because they're so deep, but you could build them 10 times bigger than what we would do under PRD1. But density, again, with our presentation that we made originally, the contiguous lots to this piece of property, our average lot size was bigger than the contiguous lots around it. Now, there are bigger lots than ours, and there are smaller lots as well. But as far as it doesn't fit, we just don't believe that that is necessarily true, given that our average lot size is bigger than the rest, contiguous to our piece of property.
Mr. Kessler, I don't mean to be rude.
Sure.
But we need to move on with this vote, please.
I understand. Well, I just would like to make one last
comment. Go.
The residents' concerns are obviously very important with any city council, and you've made the point here tonight again that a lot of people have spoken. They've spoken up tonight, and it's a lot of it is about PRD1 zoning. And in our opinion, again, we try to follow the steps as they're lined out for us. And we met with city staff, and it was brought to us, hey, maybe PRD1 would fit this really well. I think it would be beneficial to the city to consider taking the PRD1 zoning off of the zoning book altogether. Because people are very concerned about if somebody finds 2 acres, they could do it. If there's a precedent that's going to be set, and we bring a plan that, again, people have said that, even city officials have said it's a better plan than the NPD plan, and it's still going to get turned down because it could set a dangerous precedent, I think it should be pulled altogether so that this doesn't happen to another developer. Because,
Thank you,
again,
sir.
we just followed the steps as they were laid out for us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Again, the chair would welcome a motion. Mr. Jones, were you?
Yeah, well, I'll just make the motion. It needs to be in the positive, doesn't it?
Yes, it has to be.
I guess move to approve the preliminary development plan.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Jones, second from Mr. McCluskey. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
And that vote is 10-0 nay. All right, thank you. Move on to 090618, public hearing set for tonight for consideration of the rezoning application of Charles Kessler, Cadco LLC to rezone 800 to 808 Salter Road and 809 Carr Avenue from NPD to PRD1 to develop a 12-lot subdivision. Report has already been done, as far as I'm concerned. But you can go ahead and say it again. Go.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that the committee heard the report from the Planning Commission, which was a 3-3 tie vote in regards to the rezone, and voted it out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
All right. We will again open the public hearing because that's following the legality of this situation. If there is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Let's not word it negatively. You get the opportunity. It's two different opportunities. So.
Just like to say, hey, thank you all for having me. John Chashie, 836 Acton Avenue. I'm against the rezone for the same reasons that I was against the last item on the agenda. I don't think it fits in with the charm of Homewood. I don't think that, I think I only heard of the 19 people, 1 person that's for this. The other 18 are against it. And I can tell you that there are many, many, many more people that are against this that didn't show up tonight because of this misinformation. So I just wanted that on the record as well, that there was many more against this.
We're aware of that, and I'm not trying to cut you off.
That's all right. I just wanted that one on the record. It's a different menu item, so I wanted to make sure that we got that one. That's right.
But given the emails and the texts that we received,
yes,
I can promise you there were more than
right. Well, if you got it yesterday, you could have emailed us or texted us and said, hey, it's back on, just let
Didn't
you know.
know. Can I make a comment? Can I address that, please?
Sure.
Listen.
Yeah.
I, just like you, when I entered chamber, learned that it was not on the table. If I had known any time today, I would have communicated it. I thought I was doing the right thing to pass information along to constituents as I received it. So I apologize that I, like you, found out that it was still on the table tonight. Does that address your concern?
Well, I accept your apology, and thank you for apologizing.
Well,
I appreciate it. Well, let me.
That means a lot.
I can respond to him.
You
surely.
do, and I'm going to let you do that. But I want to say to you, at 5:30, the president of this council did not know which direction the developer wanted to go.
Right.
So if I had said anything to y'all in an email, there's a strong probability it would have been incorrect because I didn't know. Not trying to be argumentative.
No, I understand, and I'm not either. I'm
It's
just
a
telling you
statement of fact.
Right. Well,
Please
and I
go.
thought, and I could be wrong, and we can look at the minutes, but I thought one of y'all said we found out yesterday that it was back on. Nobody said that?
No.
Okay.
No,
Well,
because they, trust me,
not.
they didn't, I hate
Okay.
that phrase, by the way. It doesn't apply to the car business very well.
Right.
No one knew definitively at 5:30 this afternoon.
Okay. Well,
Thanks.
that's all right. And that's all. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
72-year-old Attorney Charles Amos Thompson. Do I need to repeat everything? Or
No,
you
sir.
good?
Thank you. We understand your position.
Jennifer Giles, 100 Venetian Way. So I won't repeat, still against it. I just have two things to ask for you guys to consider as you take up, and Walter, I think we talked about this in kind of the conversation we were in before. One, from what I understand of the process, the next step, if the rezone request is turned down, is that then this goes to a resurvey and they continue to look forward to splitting up the lots. And really not specific to this request, but in general, I follow a lot of the different conversations about what's going on around rezoning, and I would really encourage the council to take up quickly some of the items that are on the agenda and talking about ways to address some of the concerns around lot sizes. You know, I really do think that considering moving the when you do a resurvey request, I understand that the requirement is that it can be resurveyed and split up so that it's 85% of the impact area. I know that at one point that used to be 100%, went down to 85%. I would really encourage us to take it back to 100% so that we reduce the continual dividing and subdividing. When we do that, similar to I think something that was recently done on a development that was up back behind Edgewood near the middle school, I would also suggest considering removing homes that have variances or lots that have variances from an impact area calculation. I understand there was a situation where a house kind of got built where it wasn't supposed to. We allowed the developer and the builder to go forward. I think that's probably a fair compromise, but the decision was we're not going to allow that mistake to now set a precedent on the rest of the house. And I think if you hear some of the folks who are talking tonight, you know, the fear is that if we continue in this path and allow, now I don't know if this would be in time, and I'm not certainly advocating that, but for example, the variances that were allowed on the triangle lots, lovely people, but still that creates congestion there, to set a precedent for resurveying that piece of land, then you've continued down the path. So I urge you to continue to look for ways to get our NPD back to the state it was before, get back to 100%, consider not having the impact size, the impact area, consider things with variances. And then just to speak to the charm of Homewood, I kind of love what's going on here. I understand it's painful for some of our citizens, but there are folks and there are neighbors who are connecting and having a real debate about things that are important to us. Our community, our density, our schools, it's important. And yes, it gets heated, but the important part and the charm of Homewood is when we're done, we can all then still shake hands and smile and hug and go to church together and go to Oxmoor Bar and Grill. Please support it. I don't think they're doing well. And have a beer or whatever it is. But that's the charm of Homewood to me, is having a civil, heated debate about the issues that are important to us and then still going back and being the neighbors we always have been. That's all I have.
Well said. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lisa Group. Again, missed 3.5 minutes. I agree with what she said, and I do not support any zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Flavin, just wanted to reiterate again that I am against this rezoning, and I ask that you all deny it.
Thank you. If there is no one else, then we will close this public hearing and ask for a motion from the council.
Make a quick comment.
Sure, Mr. James.
Just, Mrs. Giles, just to let you know, at the Planning Commission level and the Zoning Book Subcommittee, there are changes being considered right now, sort of along the lines of what you were requesting. And I did just want to say, just because I have the dubious distinction of getting to be on both the Planning Commission and the City Council, where we get to vote for controversial things twice, the Planning Commission takes their duties extremely seriously when it comes to addressing all issues, but especially these controversial issues. I know someone made the comment they couldn't believe that the proposed preliminary development plan had been approved 7-0. Well, the Planning Commission absolutely separates the two items. They were looking at a preliminary development plan. Does that plan work, yay or nay? It does. You notice the zoning vote was very different with a 3-3 tie. So it's very difficult. We do have to judge based on the rules we have on the books. Are those rules perfect? No, they're not. We're constantly trying to update and improve those. We have a BZA for variance requests. I know some of our planning commission members and I think BZA members have been here tonight. So just keep that in mind. And I will say, having been at all levels of this discussion, the vast majority of everyone involved has been extremely articulate and extremely polite. There have been a few outliers. So thank you for that. When people are here, when people are face to face, most everybody realizes we're neighbors, and tomorrow we'll go back to being just that, neighbors. The internet can be a little bit different, but in the end, I know that everyone understands we all have jobs to do. Sometimes those are tough jobs, but we still do them.
Thank you, Mr. Thames. With that, Chair would welcome a motion in a second. Motion from Mr. McCluskey, second from Mr. Jones. Again, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. And the nays have it 10-0. Okay?